With an increasing population and a road network groaning under the increased load, a report has recently listed Brisbane as the 10th most congested city in the world and worst in Australia. But how much can we trust what they say? Is it accurate? And if not, how far from the truth is it? And is there still anything we can learn from the report? Well, stick with me and all will be answered. Not only am I going to dig into the report, who released it, how they reached their conclusions, and what some experts have to say about the validity of how they calculated the results, but I'll also put it all to the test by driving into the city at different times of day to see if my experience lines up with what the report says. Let's start with the report itself. It's the INRIX Global Traffic Scorecard. INRIX is a global transportation analytics company that specializes in providing real-time and predictive traffic information, as well as insights into mobility trends. So the first thing we need to keep in mind when looking at the report is their motivation for releasing the report. Obviously, a part of making the report public is to position themselves as an authority on the subject of global traffic systems. But a key thing to consider is that they sell a range of data products and services to organizations including governments, urban planners, traffic management agencies, and logistics providers. So on one hand, they need to show themselves as conducting rigorous and accurate research, but on the other hand, it's in their interests to highlight issues with traffic that they can provide solutions to for a fee. The report itself analysed 946 urban areas worldwide over 22 months, ending in 2024. The main thing that mainstream media picked up was their ranking of those urban areas based on time lost to traffic congestion over a one-year period. This is the data that we'll be digging into in this video. The rankings were calculated by comparing the time it took to commute along the busiest commuting corridors during peak hour with the time it took when traffic was low, such as in the middle of the night. Based on the report, Istanbul was the worst in the world, with commuters losing 105 hours each year to traffic delays. Next was New York City, with Chicago, London, and Mexico City rounding out the worst 5. Brisbane ranked 10th worst in the world. So is our traffic really that much worse than most other cities, including Sydney and Melbourne, Bangkok and Rome? Let me know your experience in the comments, but now let's look at some criticisms leveled at the INRIX report by experts that challenge its validity. Firstly, as the methodology compares commute times in peak traffic with those when traffic is low, differences in the nighttime dynamics of different cities could skew the results. It's well known that Brisbane has an early bedtime, and the roads are quite clear late at night, exceptionally clear. So when Brisbane is compared to another city that is more active at night, that is, it also has more cars on the road, the difference in travel times will be far more pronounced in Brisbane than in the city where there's a lot of traffic around the clock. This is likely how Brisbane was found to be more congested than, say, Bangkok. The congestion in Bangkok is more constant than in Brisbane, which pushes Brisbane up in the rankings, simply because the difference at different times of day is greater. Using INRIX's methodology, a city that is only congested during peak hour will rank as worse than a city that is congested all the time. If you want to see for yourself what the traffic is like in other cities around the world, you want to make sure you have travel insurance. And did you know that the winner of the Best International Travel Insurance for Value in Finder's 2024 Travel Insurance Awards is a local Brisbane company? Wise and Silent Travel Insurance won the 2024 Value Award because it costs less on average, but it covers you for more. They're also the official travel insurance provider for Australian passengers on Scoot Airlines and a sponsor of this video. Backed by a global insurance provider and a 24/7 medical assistance team, the rave reviews on Trustpilot confirm that you can travel with total peace of mind if you choose Wise and Silent for your next overseas trip. Click this QR code or the link in the video description to get an exclusive 10% discount on your premium. But now let's get back to what experts are saying about the INRIX report. Another criticism is that the report doesn't account for changes in things like traffic signalling, which makes the difference in travel times even more pronounced. You see, traffic light signalling in Brisbane works in two main modes depending on the time of day. During peak times, it runs on what they call coordinated mode. In this mode, intersections along a specified route all operate on a shared cycle. The timing of signals is controlled by preset time of day plans based on expected traffic conditions within set windows of time. The other mode is isolated mode. This is used for the part of the day where the traffic flow is minimal. Unlike coordinated mode, which follows preset timings, isolated mode is responsive to cars on the road. Traffic lights will typically be green for the arterial roads, but then if a car pulls up at an intersection on a crossroad, sensors underneath the road alert the system to the presence of vehicles, and the lights will change to allow them to go. So you're far more likely to spend time sitting at red lights in peak time when the coordinated mode is running than late at night when isolated mode knows you're waiting and changes to green. And this can have an impact on the time a journey takes, particularly when it's over a long distance, as Brisbane commutes frequently are. That's true in theory, but how about in real life? Well, I tested it out by driving to the city at different times, and we'll see later in the video how much time I actually spent waiting for red lights in peak and off-peak time. Experts such as Narelle Hayworth, a professor at QUT's Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety, believe that Brisbane's higher speed limits also exaggerate the difference in travel times in different conditions. Professor Hayworth says that roads that may be limited to 50 km per hour in other Australian cities have speed limits of 60 or 70 in Brisbane, so differences between free-flowing traffic and peak hour traffic may be even greater, even if the peak traffic was equally congested in each city. This is compounded by school zones, which are also active during rush hour, so even if the traffic is light, it's still 10 or 20 kilometers slower than the usual speeds in areas with schools. The problem is that INRIX gives very little detail when it comes to their methodology, so we don't know if things like school zones are accounted for, or to what extent things like population density and geographical area are factored in as well. There's a real lack of transparency around how the conclusions are reached to really take the city rankings seriously. Putting together this video, I thought it would be interesting to follow INRIX's apparent methods to calculate how much time I'd lose each year if I had to commute into the city each weekday for work. How far off their calculations would my highly rigorous experiment be? I mean, surely one person travelling in during one peak hour and one low traffic time would reflect the data collected from thousands of vehicles commuting to Brisbane over a 22-month period. Well, let's find out. Driving into the city during peak hour, there was no denying our roads are not designed to handle the volume of traffic it has to deal with each day. This is only likely to get worse if nothing is done. At the time of the 2021 census, Greater Brisbane's population was about 2.4 million people. Government projections expect that to increase to as much as 4.29 million by 2046. With public transport recently found to only be accessible for 1 in 3 Brisbane residents, and continuing deficiencies in the active transport network, despite some parts of the city having world-class active transport infrastructure, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to avoid the traffic situation worsening. But back to my experiment. And from my home to the car park I use on the rare occasions I do drive into the city took 1 hour and 6 minutes in peak hour traffic. Driving at night time when few cars were on the road and traffic lights were running in isolation mode, it took me 21 minutes. So in the time it took me to drive into the city in peak hour, I could have driven in and back and in again when the roads are quietest. If the delays were similar returning home in the afternoon, that would mean I would have lost an hour and a half to traffic congestion in a single day. And how about time spent stopped at the lights? Well, at night time when the lights were functioning in isolated mode, I spent a total of 1 minute 39 seconds waiting for reds to turn green. In peak hour, while the lights were in coordinated mode, I spent 8 minutes 49 seconds stopped at lights. That's a 434% increase. And that's only including some of the time spent in a queue far behind the lights that was virtually static. Assuming I worked 5 days a week in the city, 40 weeks a year, and experienced similar travel times in both directions on my daily commute, by INRIX's methods, that would mean I would lose about 300 hours a year to traffic congestion. That's much higher than INRIX's 84 years in their report. But as I said, if you understand sarcasm, my little trial was far from rigorous scientific research. And as I only tried it on one day, there's no way to know how representative that particular day was compared to other days over a 22-month period. But with INRIX's lack of transparency around their methodology, we just don't know how the information differs. Were they looking at shorter trips? Was it just on select roads? Only they really know. However, I'm sure if I repeated the same experiment in a city like Bangkok, I would find the difference between peak and off-peak would be far smaller, even though I may spend more time in traffic traveling the same distance both in peak and off-peak time. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the rankings are in no way comprehensive. Even though it says the data is from 7 continents, because we all know how bad the traffic can be in Antarctica, it only collected data from select urban areas in just 37 countries. That means about 81% of the world's countries were not included. No cities in China, no Korean cities, none in Brazil, Argentina, Egypt, India. I don't know if they have cities with worse traffic than Brisbane, but they may. So Brisbane's number 10 position in the world really means nothing. The one thing we can know is that while the rankings in the INRIX report are probably next to meaningless, Brisbane does have some issues to face when it comes to our city planning and dealing with changes in population over the coming years. Even with their questionable methodology, the time lost to traffic congestion as calculated by INRIX's reports over the years has increased for Brisbane, which means something. And that's one of the many things the Brisbane channel will be exploring as we dive deeper into the experience of living in Greater Brisbane over the coming years. Make sure you're subscribed and maybe even consider becoming a member of the channel to support our exploration of all things Brisbane. And if you got anything out of the video, you can always say thanks by buying me a coffee. See you in the next video.